Good evening, councillors, staff, members of the public. Welcome along to this agenda briefing, and thank you all for joining us both here in person and online. For those who haven't been to an agenda briefing before, and I notice quite a few new faces in the room, this is informal in a way. We still follow our standing orders, but this is an opportunity for elected members to go through next week's OCM, ask questions of our staff members of that through that process. It's not an official decision-making forum, so we won't make any decisions tonight, but it is that opportunity to ask any questions from that point of view. Before we do get under order though, from elected members' point of view, I've had a request for electronic attendance from Councillor Gassop. I declined this request that it didn't fulfil the policy that we have in place. Councillor Gassop has requested that that be put to council for a vote. Those in favour of letting Councillor Gassop join electronically, please indicate. Those against? That's lost. Councillor Gassop won't be joining online. The rest of us are all here. Thank you. We have a couple of declarations of interest, one from Councillor Brown, which is a financial interest. That is on item 10.4.2, so Councillor Brown will leave the room for that item. And another declaration of interest from Councillor Kozisek on... What item was that, sorry, Councillor Kozisek? 10.3.7. It is a impartial interest. Councillor Kozisek will remain in the room for that item. Is there any other declarations of interest for tonight's council agenda? Thank you. We're working our way through the agenda for those, as I said, who haven't been here before. We also have a new minute taker, so I'd like to welcome her, and please be patient. I'm sure she will pick it up very quickly with Mr. Kliniski helping her out, but thank you, Natalie. Thank you. Moving our way through the agenda, we have received one deputation, which was for item 10.4.2, which when we get to that item, we'll invite you up to speak at that stage. So once we get to that item, thank you. David. So 10.1.1, we have a number of policies here for review. Any questions, councillors, for item 10.1.1? Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't really read it in this agenda because the print's too small. Sure. But I've read it at home and I couldn't find, I think it was page 143 or something like that on one of the planning matters. I just wanted to know that are we still getting any reports for any of the refusals of planning applications?
We're only on that one.
Oh, wrong item, I think, Councillor Steck. This is Wildlife Park. Oh.
Yes, but I know, but they're all under policy reviews.
Oh, so yeah, but we'll be getting to that particular item in a moment. Yeah, so we're going, this is 10.1.1, so this is just the animal welfare one. We'll get to the planning one in a moment. Thanks, Councillor Steck. Any items, questions on 10.1.1? Thank you. 10.1.2, I have several questions, but I might see if any other elected members first. Councillor Turner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would actually like to make some changes, if possible, if staff would be able to work with me, and thank you for what they've done so far in the Policy Review Committee. But if I can give them a bit of a heads up of what I'd like to change for next week, is that possible?
Councillor Turner, this is obviously this being in a briefing session is not the opportunity to change as yet, but what I might suggest you do is ask questions which might align to what you're thinking of changing to get that in that public forum, if that's what I intend, that's what you're after, Councillor Turner. So potentially if you can phase those as questions, obviously if the staff may or may not think that's appropriate, they can form that into the agenda for next week. Okay, otherwise you've got the opportunity to move amendments next week. But in fairness to that process, maybe if we just phase those questions, Councillor Turner.
Okay, you've got prohibited from the 1st of November to the 5th of May. Is it possible to make changes so it's only prohibited from the 11th of December to the 21st of March? That's my first question. And the second question, and then have restrictions from the 1st of November to the 10th of December and then the 25th of March to the 5th of May.
We can take that as quite an easy question, I think, Councillor Turner. If I could ask the CEO to say the dates that have been come up with those restricted times, where have they come from and what the rationale was used for those?
Thank you, Mayor. I may just ask Sarah Upton, the Manager of Community Facilities, to answer that question.
Through you, the Mayor. So the original line of restricted burning periods was set with DFES, so I've just kept it in line with the original policy. All I've changed was the requirement for when you are allowed to have burning on blocks less than 2024. So I've kept all the dates exactly the same that have been lined up for the last 3 or 4 years. And just the requirements for the fire pits has been added back in.
Thank you. Councillor Turner?
I was of the understanding that the fire pit was under a different section before. It wasn't with the campfires.
CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask the manager to respond to that as well.
So the policy was changed in 2023. That was the original policy that linked fire pits and campfires, open fires. So it's in line with every other council that they all have the same kind of definitions of open flame.
Is
Councillor
it
Turner?
possible to separate campfires from fire pits? Because they're two totally different, to me, different things. The fire pit is a structure that contains a fire and prevents it from spreading. That's actually what is stated in the policy review, in the current policy, that it contains it, whereas open fire is not so contained. Is it possible to separate the fire pit into, say, the other section along with pizza ovens and barbecues?
CEO?
Thank you again. I'll ask the manager to respond.
I might just need to get some clarification from DFES because that was the original requirement from them, from us. So if I could get back to you on that.
Let's take on notice that one, Councillor Turner. Further questions on this, Councillor Steck?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to that, I had a similar question because can we please define the difference between like the product that's sold at Bunnings versus the definition of an open fire pit that is part of Calm and campfires that are out in the bush? Because can we have an absolute definition? Because again, another further question, the permits, are they considered allowable for the fire pits that are sold in Bunnings? Can we clarify that?
Sure. The first question, we'll definitely get the clarification from DFES on that, Councillor Steck. I think around the permits, and I was going to ask that question through the CEO around when the permits were required, and I think that's generally for any permits during burning season, but I'll ask the CEO to answer that question.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, I'll get the manager to respond.
Through the Mayor, when we have a fire pit or anything, request for any permit to burn, a staff would go out and speak to them, so they would assess it on site to see if it's suitable. So when I've looked back through previous fire permits, there's certain requirements, or the rangers may suggest certain things or additional things to make it more safe. So I wouldn't be able to comment specifically on ones that are sold through Bunnings or any other product. It would just depend on where the person is locating it on their site as to whether or not we would allow that permit to happen.
Mr Mayor, can I ask a
Yes, Councillor
further
Steck.
question? Would that then also be determined if the pizza ovens actually have a chimney with a capped lid?
CEO?
Again, I'll get the manager to respond.
Yes, again, it would be looked through at the time of inspection when we issue it. Sometimes we've asked for spark arresters and things to be, depending on where they're located. If they're close to someone else's property, we might ask for a spark arrestor at the top of the chimney. So it just depends on the location of and what they're actually asking us to approve.
Thank you. And one last question, Mr
Thank you,
Mayor.
Councillor Steck. Yep.
Can we please outline an appeals process? Because how is the community going to appeal a complete rejection?
CEO?
Again, Sarah, would you mind answering that?
Yeah, that's fine, through the Mayor. So this policy will allow people to do anything with their fire pits and their camp stuff from the 6th of May till October. So we won't have any involvement, which is when people want to use those fire pits for the colder weather. It's only during the restricted burning time when the fire danger could go higher than moderate that we would ask for a permit. So there's only like a few weeks either side of the actual total fire ban, which nobody can use the total fire ban, anywhere in the state. That's the only time we do it. So the majority of the time when people want to use this, we won't be involved.
So thank you to the CEO, and just to fully clarify that, and my understanding, and this can just be answered by yes or no by the manager, but my understanding is that so you only do need the permit. If this policy is adopted next week, obviously the permit would only be required outside those dates that have been speculated there.
Correct, Mayor. There will be a requirement, no requirement for a permit outside of the prescribed times that the manager has already indicated.
Sorry, can you just clarify those dates?
That's the current dates that are in the policy, Councillor. I indicated you've requested some other ones, but Manager, could you? I think it was the 1st of November to the 6th of May. Is that correct?
So a permit would be required between the 6th of May and 31st of October.
Yeah, sure. That's right. Yeah, you wouldn't need. I went the reverse dates.
That's when it's permitted. So you wouldn't need a permit any of those times. So a permit is required between the 1st of May to the 10th of December, 11th of December.
Other way around, I think,
Sorry.
Manager. So back to the original statement, 1st of November to the 6th of May would be the time under the current policy where you would need a permit.
No, incorrect. So the actual requirement for restriction is, sorry, let me just find my document. So a burning permit would be required from the 1st of November to the 10th of December. So that's when, if you wanted to use a fire pit, you'd have to come and ask us for a permit, or the 25th of March to the 5th of May.
Yeah,
So between the 10th of December and the 25th of March, you can't have any burning fire pits.
Thank you, CEO. That is what I said besides the total fire ban. Thank you. Councillor Turner.
So I'm a bit confused because they're the dates that I'm wanting to change it to, so people can have a fire before the 1st of November, or after the 1st of November and before the 5th of May, should they, well, I don't want him to even have to get a permit. Can I work with staff to try and change the dates without delaying the fire pit being past next week, basically? Can I work with staff to try and change the dates so they can have the fire pits before, so it's not the 1st of November to the 5th of May, so it's the 1st of November to the 10th of December, unrestricted, unrestricted, not prohibited, and the 25th of March to the 5th of May, restricted but not prohibited, without delaying the decision going forward next week.
CEO. Yes.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Are we, though, governed by state fire ban for the whole of the state during that time or not?
So only the dates between those December dates that was in,
Yes,
but
yeah.
effectively what was being pointed out is that there's about 3 or 4 weeks either side of the total fire ban, where at this stage you would require a permit outside those times. What's Councillor Turner is suggesting, which, bearing any other DFIS changes, we would be able to potentially put as an amendment next week.
Sorry,
Councillor
to add to that, I'm not necessarily wanting that for open fires though, only for fire pits if possible, because open fires are totally different, you know, campfire, basically, out in the bush.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to be totally clear, fire bans are set by Department of Fire and Emergency Services,
Yes.
not the City of Bunbury.
Yes. Further questions on this item? Thank you, and I realise that a number of the members of the public might have been here for that item, so you are more than welcome to stay if you would like to move. It is a bit chilly, and if you want to get back to your fireplace, then you can do. If not, obviously where we're at, that decision will be dealt with next week. So the current policy is in place, which is basically revoking the changes that were made, which intends to not require a permit during those periods. There's been some flagged as some potential changes, but that'll be dealt with next week. For anyone who's here for that, who has particular interest in that item, you can make a deputation at next week's council meeting if you'd like to, and then we can go through that process, but that'll be dealt with next Tuesday. Thank you. Moving along. Item, as I said, you're more than welcome to go. You can stay if you'd like. We've got a number of other policies to work through. I'll give those who are just going a quick moment. Item 10.1.3. Councillor Turner.
Sorry, me again.
Yes.
In regards to, we're losing parking spaces for these to set up, really nice outdoor areas. Do we do any inspections at all of the areas when they do set up somewhere? Because looking at planter boxes don't exactly look that well kept, and that's a condition that they keep their plants looking nice and cleanliness of the area. Do staff inspect the areas on a annual or biannual?
CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Look, my understanding is that we do, but as you we've already discussed, it hasn't been an area of priority. But I get the point. That's something that we do need to do more of.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, noting that this will apply to existing licences as well. There's a couple of proposed changes to do with vertical clearance and minimum setback. Would that affect any of the current licence holders who have alfresco areas at the moment?
CEO.
Not that I'm aware of, but I might ask the Director of Sustainable Development to make a comment.
Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to that policy too, I have a question. It states that you have to reapply for the licence for the alfresco area in the case the business has been sold, correct? My question relies then, why does that request being required from the business owner? Because usually a bank would ask for a bank guarantee or some of the sorts for a business sale. And I would have thought, why haven't we asked that the licence just moves along with the sale of the business?
CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we'll just take that question on notice. I'm not sure, Councillor Steck, why, but we can certainly check that out and come back to you.
And the end of the day too, why are we then renewing them annually? Is that correct?
CEO.
I'll get the Manager of Community Facilities to make a comment.
It's in the local laws, they have to have a yearly licence. So it's just that's just the local laws, that's all it is. And it's just a simple renewal process. We have had an application recently where a business is sold. They just need to apply to put it into their name, and then we transfer the licence over to them.
Again, Mr. Mayor, then it makes me even more curious as to why we go down this path, because in normal business sales, wouldn't we just give them a continuation of licence? And I ask then, why aren't we just giving them a 5-year permit, the same as any lease agreement?
We'll get that back to you on that first question, Councillor Steck.
CEO, if I can make a comment though, it is in the local law, so that is something within the cities, so that's something that's been approved by the elected members. So if you wanted to change that, you could.
Thank you, because that's where I'm headed. One last question. I just remembered when I read through it at home. Why are we supplying the planter boxes? Why can't the businesses buy their own planter boxes?
CEO.
Manager Community Facilities.
Through you, Mayor, we only provided the ones originally in the alfresco area in Victoria Street. We haven't provided any more. We've had some in stock that a couple of businesses managed to get, but most of the businesses are buying their own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. 1014. All good. No changes recommended. Councillor Steck.
I just have a question, but it may not relate to this, but it relates to if we get a evaluation for a specific amount of monies, why do we then, would we go to market for a lot less than the valuation?
If you're referring to a particular thing that's just been out for advertising, it's not really in relation to this particular thing, but happy to have that conversation offline, Councillor Steck, or you can ask that question on notice.
Thank you.
1015. Delegations. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the statutory annual review of delegations, again, I refer back to that planning matter. Are we getting detailed information or information on rejections of applications for development in the city?
CEO.
So if you're talking about, so obviously we have delegated, you're talking about the ones where we have delegated authority and we've refused. I'll have to go to the Director of Sustainable Development. We can clearly have got that information, but I'm not sure whether that's provided to elected members in any forum.
Because I just wanted to ask the question because I couldn't find it anywhere in the list of delegations, that's all. And I haven't seen a rejection for some time.
CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. So if you've given delegated authority to the officers, the issue is about whether we're reporting back to you, whether we have refused that. It's not, you either give me delegation or not. Your issue is about reporting, I would think, isn't it?
Yes, but I'm also requesting that I will I seek change to that because I think councillors should be aware of what we're rejecting.
CEO.
Again, Mr Mayor, that's not an issue about delegations, that's an issue about reporting. So if it's an issue about reporting, we can certainly provide that.
Thank you. 1031. Councillor Turner.
Can I just get confirmation that to photocopy one piece of paper is 70 cents per sheet?
CEO.
So you're referring to the fees and charges,
Yeah.
Councillor?
next
I would think that's been something that's been indexed over time, so that's been in there for some time. If you're asking whether that's appropriate, it's been a fee that's been in our fees and charges for some time.
It's 1032 as well, Councillor Turner, so we've gone one far, just back to 1031. Yeah, that's okay. We skip that one for next one. 1031.
Just Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
Steck, yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, has the business community been, I guess, consulted?
That's what this process will be, Councillor Steck. We'll be putting, in terms of the changes or predicted changes, that's what this will do, which includes obviously the reasons and it goes out for advertising through that process, Councillor Steck. So that'll be that consultation. I know last reval we asked to have a business ratepayers group and put it out advertising and try to get a group involved. And you might remember at Councillor Steck, we didn't have anyone wanting to join that, to have a conversation, and we actually tapped a few people on the shoulders and asked them to come along, and they didn't want to come either. So we have certainly tried in previous years, but this obviously will go through the statutory advertising that it's required for. Councillor Turner?
If this was to go ahead at a variable rate, would that only be for the 1 year or would it be the 3 years?
I might just ask them to take it, just to scroll down on this page a bit. Yeah, thank you. Just so I know we're referring back. So yeah, obviously if the recommendation is to go to the differential rate, that'll then that's then the position going forward. So each budget, each year, the council will determine the differential rate per property, per property type, and move from there. So that's how it would be, which would, yeah. Councillor Andrew?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Have we seen any data or heard any other anecdotal evidence around the GRVs and other local governments and even Metro around the disparity between residential and commercial?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll pass over to the Manager of Finance in a bit, but generally they're done at different times. So you know, when I was at Claremont, sort of a similar thing happened in terms of the disparity between the valuations for commercial property versus residential, not dissimilar to here. And we obviously know, you know, that other councils even in this region have had the same. So, but I'll pass over to the Manager of Finance who may have some more information around the valuation process for other local governments in this region.
Through you, Mr Mayor. We haven't gone a direct comparison. As the CEO indicated, the Valuer General goes through, staggers the reval throughout the state, but we've noted that as revals come up, that residential properties are having a large increase, as we've seen in the market for rental properties, and that's not so much the case with the commercial industrial properties.
Okay. Further questions, councillors? And just make note, next week we'll deal with these separately. Obviously there's a few separate sort of items amongst that, so we will deal with each of those items separately next week. (10.3.2) fees and charges. Any other questions besides photocopying costs or a follow-up question, Councillor Turner?
If I may, Coolambilly private commercial is going up to $500 a day for commercial. That's quite a large fee. Why are we not having an hourly rate, please, any longer for it?
Yeah, Councillor Turner, we had a briefing about CEO. I'll get you to outline that as well.
Thank you. I might just pass to the Director of Corporate and Community. My understanding was that this was to encourage the full day use of it, but I'll ask the Director to make a comment.
Through the chair, yes, agree. That is partly the reason. We also want to give our community groups an opportunity to also have availability of the room. So that was the other reason.
Councillor Steck?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just looking forward in tourism and economic development, if we utilise that space for far more tournaments, how will that impact on a simple $500 a day rate?
I think that would be part of a larger event. Obviously, if it would be a not-for-profit group running an event too, they get currently free charge anyway, if it's not for profit group, and obviously it's a commercial group, I would suggest they would go through any grant process they would have to, which they would get the space in its entirety. But CEO, any other comment on that outside that?
Nothing further to add, Mayor.
So I apologise, but I haven't got my computer here, but I can't see this. But there was many of the fees and charges that went down from last year, and I was curious as to why, because some of them we have more staff on those spaces, so I didn't understand it.
I'm not sure if, without particular examples, Councillor Steck, I'm not sure we can answer, but we can respond on some. I know some of the ones that are statutory, if they change, obviously it's outside our control. So if it's a statutory charge and they say this is what the charge is, we have to then apply that. I wouldn't imagine, well, there clearly is some that have gone down, but if you can provide specific examples, we can find out why. But CEO? Yeah,
thank you, Mayor. If Councillor Steck wanted to provide any further information, we're happy to provide the information of why fees have changed as they have.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. 10.3.3, schedule of accounts paid. Thank you. 10.3.4. Thank you. 10.35. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any other way around? I know we've got to get debt collectors and they can only do so much, but with 66.3% of people not paying when it's to do with the dogs, I'm sorry, but the amount of work that goes in to try and find someone is not just a small thing. Is there any other way around following up on these accounts? Am I on the wrong
I think you're on the jump with it, but it's the same sort of concept. It's right off the receivables, which is obviously accounts owed to us, and then infringements. So I don't think there's any questions on 10.35. So we'll go to 10.36, which is more around those infringement write-offs, which will make a bit more sense. CEO, do you want to outline? I believe there is some other stuff we can put in place, especially around traffic infringements, but in terms of other infringements for dog ownerships or cat ownerships, I'd imagine it'd be quite difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, we do have our process, but I get the point that there's certainly more that we can probably look at. But if you're happy, I'll take that offline and work with the team and see if there is further improvements we can make.
We have a response.
Sarah, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, please, through the Mayor. Even though we've written them off our books, it still goes through fines enforcement. So we will eventually get that income coming through when they pay or lose their licence and want their licence back. So it just has to come off our books for the 2 years. So I've had people where I've prosecuted and 10 years later they've paid because they wanted a loan. So it will come back eventually. It just doesn't show up on the current financial reports.
Thank you. Thanks for that information. Further questions? Thank you. 10.37. Councillor Gosling has the impartial interest, but will remain. Any questions on this? Councillor, I know we have the CEO. Shelley is here. CEO, General Manager. Thanks, Shelley. Thanks for joining us. All good? Councillor, yep, Councillor Steele.
Only because of what happened all those years ago without CPI changes and stuff, and I do understand that point two, it goes from $100,000 to $120,000 per annum. Are we going to have a CPI next to that? Because this is how we got in trouble in the first place, was not having that in the very original motion.
Next point down, Councillor Steele.
Oh,
Should get us
God.
covered for a bit.
So this is why I should wear new glasses.
So
Ignore me then.
Yeah, and as you're aware, obviously there's a lot of there's a lot of work happening in that space around the current budget and what else we're doing around that. But obviously this gives a little bit of guidance around that, and we'll no doubt be reporting back over those next areas. But point three, just Perth CPI, because there's different CPIs around the place. So Perth CPA is obviously more aligned to WA CPI, but we can. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a much better definition of that, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think the intent is for these sorts of operating subsidies that we do index, and I think you'll take the point. That's exactly why we're, one of the reasons why we're here. I think from our perspective, we're supporting this entity strongly, and through the work that Karen's been doing, and with David Ransom as well. So, and Shelley's doing a fantastic job in terms of, making a whole lot of change in this. So I think with CPI, we've got to support these to survive, not put CPI in and then get to where we are right now.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Steve. Sorry, Councillor.
Only because it says considers including, so that means next year we could say, no, we're not going to consider it.
I think
Does that mean, can you just
yeah, it's just the
clarify
same.
it's not really yes or no? So I think that's what was my...
We can't adopt any funding commitments outside our yearly budget. So it's the same with point two, is we consider it. It means that'll be forming part of the budget, but we obviously can't commit a future council. So all it'll be, if it considers, it means that'll form part of the budget going forward, saying here's what we've committed to. Obviously, council of the day wanted to change that mind, and that's the council of the day decision. Thank you. 1041. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Gee, this writing is so small, mine's printed, not landscape. The priority, I think it's, there are 4, I think it might be, to revitalise Bunbury to attract investment and economic growth. My question is, how are we going with getting any funding commitment in relation to a sign on the ball, as was election promise?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was election commissioners, Councillor Steck, but we've definitely provided some a document which was all signed by our 4 neighbouring shires around that, both to our local member and then through. And I was only thinking the other day about an update on that. So, CEO, do you have any update on that?
No, so you're correct, Mayor. The 4 surrounding councils did put a document to the minister, and we've got a state budget that that's going to be handed down in the next few weeks. So there may well be potential in there. We certainly have asked for that, and then as you know, Councillor Steck, through our tourism plan, the issue about signage generally around the city, but certainly for coming into the city was identified, that signage audit. So hopefully that submission is in there and we may get some good news, but we'll wait and see.
Thank you. Just a further question, if I may, Mr
Yes,
Mayor.
Councillor.
Advocate for increased investment in infrastructure services, land releases and enabling housing, but also I think it's actually priority 2 to advocate for regional waste management. I note that, Mr CEO, you have met with the Minister for the Southwest and here for Bunbury. I'm just wondering how we're going with that as well, considering our councils have spent quite a considerable amount of money and we're at a point where we really are at crossroads as to whether we continue. We really do need to know what sort of funding we will be getting, and I guess I just would like an update.
CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Mayor and I did meet with the Minister for the South West Office. Don was unavailable last Friday, but we've had a number of discussions around waste in this region and the need for there to be further state government investment. As you know, through the Bunbury and Harvey Regional Council, we've worn the brunt, and Harvey has as well in terms of waste management in this region. We do need a coordinated approach across all of the Southwest councils if we're going to make headway. And there's 3 issues. We're obviously dealing with BHRC, but we're also dealing with having a waste management facility for this region. Trucking waste to Perth or other alternatives is not appropriate. We're big enough. We just need to act with the volumes that we have in this region and then seek the investment. So it's certainly one of the 3 things that we're trying to pursue. The future of BHRC is something we're discussing, but it is the sustainable waste facility, presumably at Stanley Road, which is something that this city has a strong interest in. It has the buffer zone, it has the transport links, but it needs probably 30 to 50 million investment, and that's certainly something we're going to continue to pursue. It is also, from the zones perspective, in the top 3 priorities. So there is strong acknowledgement across the region that we need a facility down here.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Through Mr Mayor, further question?
Sure.
I'm also curious through the Southwest Councils and also our Economic Alliance group, has there been any kind of interest and consideration with investing into the BHRC, albeit if we change the entity?
Investment in external private investment is what you're indicating, Councillor Steck?
No, other council investment too.
I think it's certainly been raised, but and the key criteria which I think the CEO's worked on with the other CEOs, and that's what will come forward out of this process, is around what's the future of BHRC as an operating model, and what does that look like, and obviously we'll have a conversation about that in time, but then it will be about what is the regional approach and what do we need to do that. And in terms of advocacy, as we just outlined, the CEO's just outlined, the most important thing for us is advocate on behalf of as a region And if we don't do that well, then we're probably going to get very little, but we need to make sure that happen. I know CEO, you've been doing some work in the CEOs groups around that regional approach. Have you anything further to add on that regard?
And you've already seen that, Mayor. There's currently a tender out for FOGO processing across the region, and that's going to give us, indication of what the market would process FOGO for. But it also demonstrates, I think it will demonstrate that if we work together and we've got the volumes and we've got, we can use all of our volumes, we're going to get a better bang for buck. So I think, us operating together is the way that we need to work if we're going to get a regional facility up.
Thank you. Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions on advocacies? Councillor Quain?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at the Strategic Advocacy Priority Status Report for the period 30th of April. And I'd just like to ask a question about Priority 4, Advocate for Initiatives to Revitalise Bunbury to Attract Investment and Economic Growth. And I'm particularly interested in the CEO presented to RDA Southwest board meeting on key projects that the city is working on. Can you please let me know what are the key projects that were mentioned at this meeting?
CEO?
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Quain, for the question. So you've probably heard me say this a number of times, but it was an opportunity for me to speak to RDA and just to give them an update around some of the great things, from what's happening with the, transforming Bunbury's waterfront, to what's happening with Bicentennial Square, to some of the land development opportunities that we're pursuing, projects like the Ocean Pool, the new hotel that I think, we'll hopefully be able to announce shortly. So just sort of reflecting on some of the things that are happening, whether that be in housing. Obviously, we've got a major events tourism push at the moment with both the AFL and with the Matildas coming to the city of Bunbury. So it was really just packaging up all of those things that you would have heard me talk about a lot in some of the things I did as I've been here. The wonderful opportunity that we have, from revitalising the city to Bicentennial Square to all of the land development to Back Beach, and how that could look going forward to the other hotel site next to the lighthouse. There's Punch Bowl, all of those things that are exciting for this city. So it was really just an opportunity to talk to them, at their board meeting.
Thank you for the update.
Further questions on this item? Thank you. 10.4.2, Councillor Brown, I'll ask you to please leave us. Yes, and we do have the deputation. David, thank you. Yeah, when he starts. Thanks, David. So as we discussed, this is an opportunity for deputation. You have 10 minutes to make your deputation. Thank you.
Fine. I don't have to turn it on. It's already on. I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for giving me the opportunity to address you today. I would like to thank planning staff for their input and professionalism in assessing our application. A bit of history. We purchased Total Salvage on the 6th of July 2019. Our business has been in the same location for 30 years. Since taking over the business, we have added infrastructure to enable us to quadruple our stock. We now provide employment equivalent to 3 full-time employees. We work closely with local employment agencies so we can offer positions to unemployed as a priority. We have now outgrown our premises. We see ourselves as providing a service to the community, the environment in carbon saving, and council by taking an estimated 300 to 400 tonnes of otherwise waste material away from landfill and redirecting it back into the community. With the closure of the forest timber industry, we communicated our concerns to the state government to address their policies, re-timber, and to reconsider deconstruction of buildings, not demolition. Unbeknown to many, there are thousands of tonnes of quality jarrah sent to wood chipping every year by demolition contractors. Our business deconstructs houses, the roof, the floor, the walls, timber are all processed to be transformed into recycled flooring of high quality. I take this opportunity to point out that in seeking grants to relocate, we approached local shire councils for support. We received letters of support from Harvey, Dardanup, Donnybrook, Capel, Manjimup and Bunbury, with the only noticeable absentee being Busselton. We also received signatures of support from customers, with 62 obtained over a 3-week period from the 3rd of April 24 to the 24th of April 24. Please note that 62 signatures represented every visitor to our business over this period of 21 days. Taking out the days we were not open, that's just short of 4 customers per day. That is hardly deemed to be heavy traffic. Our estimation of 10 cars per day could then be considered very conservative. After several meetings with Gary Barber, your previous head director of planning, and the previous CEO, in an attempt to find a suitable location, we asked Gary to identify land that I felt might be suitable, and he would investigate its suitability for a salvage yard. When asked to comment on the current location, he advised in writing that a salvage yard was not recognised under the local planning scheme. However, a resource recovery depot was. Analysing the two businesses and the descriptions therein, we realised that they were one and the same. He advised that under the GBRPS scheme needed to be complied with re-access. Initial contact with Main Roads was undertaken, which outlined the likely requirement of a crossover upgrade. Acting upon this information, we proceeded to purchase the land. We never anticipated Main Roads would reject our application. The report made by Philip. Going through the report item by item, and the only point of concern in that is access to South West Highway under the Greater Bunbury Regional Planning Scheme. Vehicular access and parking. I point out that to support their decision not to approve, the Main Roads have created an anomaly. I asked councillors where can they think of an example of where the speed limits vary from one side of the road to the other. In this short distance, approximately 1,500 metres between 2 roundabouts, they do. On this 900-metre section, it is 100 kilometres per hour. Northbound from Lilydale Road to Wilman-Wadandi roundabout, the speed limit is 100 kilometres per hour. Yet heading south from Wilman-Wadandi roundabout to Lilydale Road, it remains 80 kilometres per hour. During a meeting with Robert Barnsley, head of Main Roads, he was unaware of the northbound section was signposted 80 kilometres an hour. Shortly after that meeting, the 100 kilometre per hour signposts appeared. Whilst researching Main Roads policy today, we found policy guidelines state a minimum of 2 kilometres required to establish a 100 kilometre per hour zone. We will put this information and query to the Minister for Transport. In broad terms, we see very few adverse findings raised by staff in relation to land use. In fact, the scheme supports industrial use. One could be left wondering how access has never been addressed, yet this industrial use has been incorporated into the Bunbury scheme and the Greater Bunbury scheme. Special control areas, design, bushfire, Aboriginal heritage, environmental considerations, sewer. We have planned to use modern systems that do not require sewer or septic. We believe that any concerns can be overcome very easily. Officers' comments, community consultation. These are just headings that came through. They didn't require me to add anything to it. Points raised, structure plan. It is our understanding that our land use complies under your scheme. Therefore, there is no requirement here. I need to be corrected there. Access, this is under review with the Minister, and if not successful, SAT. Effluent disposal, the proposed use will have no effluent impact and no runoff to the Preston River. We point out that the main roads have caused massive erosion with runoff from the Lilydale Road roundabout onto Lot 154 and into the Preston River. This has been reported to Main Roads, Waters and Rivers, Minister of the Environment and Minister Safriotti. Bushfire risk. A bushfire risk assessment has been provided to staff, no risk here. In closing, I make myself available to discuss any issues Council may have and to extend them an invitation to do an on-site inspection. An ideal outcome for us at the council meeting will be for you, the council, to acknowledge the work your staff have done in recommending a rejection, and then further to offer your support for us to take this matter to the Minister and SAT. In addressing SAT, it would be beneficial for us to have the Bunbury Council's support. In doing so, we seek council support to override the staff's recommendation and grant us a conditional approval. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, you've offered there for any elected members to reach out to you, and we can make your details available to you. Thank you, David. And I will note before we ask any questions, I did see one of our friends in the city, Mr. Castrelli, join us. He must have snuck in there because I haven't seen you sitting directly behind the podium there, but I've just catching just the sunshine's coming through nicely. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, John. Item, councillors. So this recommendation is before us. Questions? Councillor Kozak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, is the only holdback here is that Main Roads considered that the access is not suitable, and yet they are not seeming to follow their own rules?
Yeah, I might see if CEO can get one of the planning team to help us out a bit there and maybe just give some of that background, because, yeah, similar questioning around, clearly the main refusal here is around access. So maybe if they're happy to, one of the planning staff is able to provide some background information on this, further background information. Thanks, CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. We do have Philip Diamond, our planning officer, who would be happy to answer that.
Yep, for the Mayor. I'm a bit confused about Main Roads following their own rules, so if that could be clarified. But otherwise, in terms of the recommendations from Main Roads, that's in accordance with the state's Development Control Policy 5.1, which restricts regional road access. And there's only very limited occasions where accesses to regional roads can be supported under that policy. So, yeah, if there's a specific example of where Main Roads hasn't followed that policy, we can have a look at that. But obviously, in the report, it talks about the access to the north, which is actually to a local road as well. So, yeah.
Councillor Kozak, did you have an example about what you meant there in that regard?
Referring to what the gentleman
Comments.
said about the speed limits and the space of the road. I can't remember the exact details.
Yeah.
It did seem to conflict with what they had asked. Sorry. I should have written it down, but didn't.
Sure.
For the Mayor, I probably would take that on notice. I'm not too sure about what policy was being referred to in terms of the 2 kilometres. As far as I could see from Main Roads, there's speed limit mapping that it's pretty consistent. That it's 80 kilometres before this property, and then 110 kilometres at the point where the merging lane sort of tapers off and closes. So I'm not too sure about that, but I'm certainly aware that there were quite a lot of roadworks there over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's possible that potentially before the roadworks it was 80 and 110, and then afterwards they've returned it to that. So there might have just been an overlap there, but yep.
Councillor Kozak?
Question, if I may, if council decides to vote in favour of the applicant, does Main Road still have the final decision, or does it go to SAT and they override that?
Yeah, so probably just, there was a request there about if council were to consider overriding staff's recommendation and making their own, where does that fall in terms of the fact that you've had Main Roads have put in a rejection themselves, CEO? Could you provide and maybe ask for plenty of staffing of what opportunities they have around that as well, about any alternative recommendation?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll ask our planning officer to comment.
Through the Mayor. Basically, in terms of, so there's two applications being processed here. There's the local application under the local planning scheme, and then there's the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme application. So if council decided to approve, they could only approve the local application conditionally, and I guess that'd be a condition about the access. In terms of the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme application, that would then, our delegation falls away at that point, and we would then prepare a report to the Department of Planning to determine that GBRS application. The advice from the department was that they would likely follow Main Roads' advice, so that would likely result in a refusal at that point. And then there's sort of a separate matter in terms of the Main Roads also has the approval requirements in terms of the crossover as well. So they do still have the ability to approve or refuse that crossover application, which is a separate application as well.
Councillor.
A follow-up question. So the Greater Regional Bunbury Planning Scheme, who sits on that? Who makes that decision? Who is that involved in? Like other councils as well as Bunbury? Like.
Yeah, that goes through the state government. So similar if they're asking, so for another example might be something like Chilbrook will come back to council with a recommendation to either approve or refuse, but all we're doing is providing that guidance to how that fits in, and they'll make the state planning will make the final determination. CEOs, I believe is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, Mayor, that's correct.
Councillor Stagg.
Mr Mayor, let's say that council agreed with this and it was against our staff.
Yep.
The reasonings behind that are only a select few, and then how would we sit with the legal cost at that as well?
I think obviously this is for this is for a recommendation. Like any decision council makes in any regards can be used or can be appealed. So in this regard, obviously, if this was executive recommendation was currently carried, obviously the applicant has the opportunity to appeal that as well through SAT. So conversely, the same as if we were to approve it with conditions, you could have Main Roads or anyone else challenge that decision and go through a process as well. So that would just be a consideration for council. But CEO, anything further to add on that regard?
Nothing further, Mayor.
I think what the applicant indicated was that if council has a desire to support it, he sounds like he's going to be appealing the decision of Main Roads already, and he wants, obviously, if council is supporting it, would add to his decision to appeal Main Roads' decision. And it might be the opportunity to meet, as David's offered, to have some further conversation with him. It's not available in this, obviously, forum, but if you would like to from that point of view, it might be well worth taking up. And again, as I've always suggested, for anyone who's looking for potential any amendments for next week, just either having a conversation with our planning staff about what that might look like to get some of that wording correct, if that's the case, someone wants to go down. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is there currently any work underway for preparation of a structure plan over this precinct?
CEO.
I'll ask our planning officer to answer that.
No, so there's no current structure plan being prepared for this area or for that area to the north of it. It's usually, in terms of these structure plans, they usually come from the developer. So in this circumstance, there hasn't been any, we haven't received any application for it. It's in terms of the structure plan, there's not a, we can vary the requirement for a structure plan in cases of development, but obviously the report says that in this case it's probably not valid to vary that given the access issues and the safety issues with that access.
Further questions? Thank you. Thank you. We'll deal with that item next week. David, you're more than welcome to join next week and make another deputation as well. Thank you. Somebody just get Councillor Brown back for me, please. Thank you. Councillors, this did have a confidential attachment on it, so if there's questions around that, we can save them for the end potentially and go behind closed doors. But if there's any other generic questions, I'm happy to take them now. Councillor Kosick?
I'm not sure whether it's generic or not.
Yeah?
On the bottom of the briefing note, that last paragraph, I just need clarification on that, please. Can you do that? Or do we
See, I
need
can
to-
do that in a position now. We might just roll this item to the end of the agenda and deal with Kyle. I don't have the briefing note in front of me.
Right? I think on the other side. Flip it over.
No, it's this one, isn't it?
I thought it was there.
No.
Oh, yeah.
And the last, yeah, just around the cost. What we might do, Councillor Kozega, is we might leave this to the end because there's a conversation. We thought we had another item coming to this round of a meeting, which isn't coming from the briefing last week. So we'll leave this at the end and we can deal with that as well. Thank you, and we'll go behind closed doors then. Thank you. Moving along, we have Councillor Steck's motion notes. Is there any questions of staff or questions of Councillor Steck? If otherwise, we will deal with this item next week. Councillor
Mr
Steck,
Mayor,
questions?
could I ask that we have an updated detail with the patronage, so the numbers that are going through the Bird Wildlife Park in the summertime versus the wintertime, please?
So yeah, is that data easily accessible? Sure.
Yep,
have
we can
that
provide
organised
that.
for next week. Thank you. Councillor Turner?
If I can just ask regarding Councillor Steck's motion, is that just Bombay ratepayers, Bombay residents, or would that be open, free entry to anybody and everybody? Thank you.
Councillor Steck?
Mr Mayor, I welcome the question, and if we're going to have real economic development, you've got to do that by fiscally engaging with people, and the more people that come, the better off you are. So open
everyone-
and accountable for everyone.
Thank you. So everybody, Councillor Turner? Other questions on this item? Thank you. So for those who have still joined us, we are going to go behind closed doors for this item we're going back to, but thank you very much. We'll likely see you potentially next week.